Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Titans, Season 3, Episode 11. If we can even call this an episode, it really wasn't to me. Really, in the very beginning of the episode, we end up having, just Crane shaving, going into the toilet, shaking it twice, and why am I seeing any number of this scene? That whole setup is to basically tell you where the whole episode is really just going to go. It's going to be a non-existent thing that you honestly could have skipped, and it would not have made a difference, in all honesty. This episode was so boring that I'm like, you know what? Like, I am so desperately wanting, man, if they come up with this, they will have me hooked. I will go in and I will purposely watch every single episode, whether it's garbage or not. I will seriously go into a Justice League Dark show. Like, supposedly they were teasing about that eventually there might be a Justice League Dark show, and I will watch the heck out of that. Because I'm so much more interested in anything that has to do with that. Like, I would go and I would watch the horrible episodes of Doom Patrol Season 2, so that way at least I can just, have seemingly something to watch besides this episode. Because it was just riddled with nothing. Like, here's what I was doing during this episode. I was going in and I was, searching, Justice League Dark stuff. And I was like, oh, hey, Animal Man had returned to Justice League Dark? Ooh, I hope they make him a consistent member of Justice League Dark in the comic books. Yeah, that's really cool. Justice League Dark, number 20, Animal Man returns, evidently, to the DC universe. I'm like, man, I hope they make Animal Man a prime member there. Because, man, I am so interested and just having a Justice League Dark show where you have, Animal Man being the leader, and you have other certain characters that you're kind of playing with. I know they're going to go to the staple, oh, this is the original Justice League Dark lineup, so we're going to go with this roster of people. I'm going to be like, no. Hopefully they don't have, I don't know, I'm not, a real Constantine fan for Justice League Dark. I think that ship has sailed. Constantine has been on other things. He's been on Legends of Tomorrow. Are they just gonna, shift him over to that show? I think that ship has kind of sailed. They can have a lot of fun things going on with the Justice League Dark lineup to make it a completely different show. But that was holding my entire interest. I was thinking, man, what if we have Man-Bat on that show? What if we have, some interesting characters that have also been mixed into Justice League Dark? What if we have the Spectre, the original Spectre, not the Oliver Queen version? Man, that would be so interesting. I was so interested in that than anything that was going on in this episode while I was watching this episode. Because there was nothing here. We have this goofy part where, we're spending a lot of time with Crane and some pizza man for some frickin' reason, and, we are to have, again, Starfire having some stupid, and I mean stupid, side mission in this episode. Beast Boy and Raven are also having a very stupid side mission that is to just milk out of this thing. Superboy has something to do in here, but who cares? Some dialogue with Grayson, and that's about it. Both Troy and Drake are to meet up, and they're to meet up to eventually just do something in a desperate attempt to try and contact the Titans team, and that's about a lick of all of what they're really going to be doing in this episode. And Todd is to eventually call out Grayson, because again, we have to have another just Red Hood Nightwing fight out if we haven't had that in plenty of other episodes. Plenty! As I've said that, as I've basically spit all over my freaking screen. My apologies for having to clean that up. Yeah, so I am just utterly bored by this show, and this is going, like, this episode right here, like, if we don't have a good enough payout for the season finale of this show, I do not think I will have interest at all into Titan Season 4. They better have some freaking whammadine impressive thing to get me interested in Titan Season 4, because I would just say F off with this show, because like, they have to give some increase to this roster, or if they have to have a better freaking team story. They have to give me some villain that's just gonna wow the heck out of me for the following season, or otherwise I'm gonna be like, F off with this show. If they had Justice League Dark set up as maybe a villain in that show for next season, I'm like, wow, this is cool. But if it's not that, I could just say completely F off with this show. There has to be something cool going on with this show to keep my interest, because this is boring as F. Like, man, like, the early episodes were interesting enough, but now we have just gone into complete of a boredom direction where I'm just like, man, there's so many episodes that are just milking the F out of this. And plus also another Beast Boy episode where he does lick of all nothing, besides just going and cheese whipping some symbol out for Raven to just be like, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's go and do that mission because we have F all to do. So let's go into that double 5 time territory, as I've pretty much, like, kind of really just teed up this episode because there is F all to do. Like, I didn't purposely delay the reviewing of this. Like, I wasn't feeling in my best self to go and do videos the day before, so I just decided to just take a break because I desperately, like, needed one. Or otherwise, like, videos would have just not come out very well. So I just tried to do my best today to eventually just kind of do whatever this is. So it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time I'm going to spoil this episode. The freaking most boringest thing in the world. Man, I couldn't wait to just see Crane just come into another episode with a song in his heart. TLC's Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls is playing weirdly in the beginning of this episode. So Crane is going and he is to finally go and shave himself. I'm like, wow. I needed to see Crane shave himself, take a dump, take a shower, frickin' shake it twice for freedom. And then go about his way to wake up Todd and... Or no, wait. Crane goes into Bruce Wayne's database and is to eventually hear Bruce Wayne have some insights about Crane and how Crane is really just to need other people to really help him do his job. Like, he desperately needs to call upon others and put fear within them to force them to do his job. And Bruce Wayne is to pretty much mention that in this recording, and Crane is just getting really upset because Crane is to find out that Bruce just kind of sees him as a very weak person that is to desperately need a team or other people. Which I think that really makes sense when Scarecrow is to need this toxin to be within Bruce to then have him be incapacitated. It's just like, well, yeah, that seems kind of lazy. Like, you're not having to really battle anybody or whichever. No, it's just you use this thing So yeah, I can see where he's coming with. And immediately needing the Red Hood to eventually save Gotham, which what the did they even do to save Gotham really in this episode? Not F all, because Gotham kind of saves itself technically, let's just say. So after Crane is to eventually go and hear what Bruce has to say, Crane is looking at his mask that's in the trophy case, and I'm like, come on, put it on. Put on the freaking mask. Get busy with it. Like, come on. Like, put this Scarecrow mask on, motherfucker. Come on. Like, it's been freaking X amount of episodes now, and we don't have the Scarecrow mask on. But at the very end of this episode, Crane is like, hey, we don't need masks anymore. I'm like, fuck, God. So, like, they tease that he's going to put on the mask just for them to say, oh, no, like, we're not going to need masks anymore. You. Like, this is garbage. So Crane is to wake up Jason Todd to go and tell him it's like, hey, you need to go for the 80th time and call out Grayson and to try and like get him to come out so you can face him again. And Crane also tells Jason that it's like, hey, like I know you being here is like filling you with fear that eventually you will never be good enough for Bruce Wayne. And newsflash, Jason Todd, you never will be. Like, now you have that relief of just knowing that you will never be good enough for Bruce Wayne, for Batman. So, like, now you should be able to easily go and fight off Grayson and call him out for the 80th time to duke it out. So now Red Hood is to go and put out this message via the Batcave with his Red Hood mask on to call out Grayson while Grayson and Superboy are in this kind of hideout that I guess that they had just... Like, I guess they just have a billion hideouts because Bruce Wayne, right? So Grayson is to put away his costume because, of course, like, he's trying to be incognito. And I guess the world technically doesn't need Titans right now anyway, so you might as well have taken off that costume. So Superboy ends up getting both Grayson and Connor some clothes, and because of course he has his super speed, so he's just like super speeding through town to get them clothes. So Todd calls Nightwing out, just Nightwing, because of course why would he call out the whole entire Titans? Because F all of any of that, right? It's just like, really, just Titans is one man, like it's not a group. That's sad. Like, so there's never going to be like a female leader of Titans because it's just one man. So what ends up happening is Nightwing is to eventually just start to walk away, and Superboy is like, wait, no, like, how about I go with you? And Grayson is just like, well, that's great and all, but I think I'm gonna need to go on this alone. I'm like, wow, Superboy, you just have so much going on in this story that basically he's just reserved to just wait it out to eventually hear something back from Blackfire. And I'm sure Blackfire is so desperately waiting to just call either Superboy or any one of the other Titans to let them know what's all going on, because she cannot give a single F about anybody of this team. Even the one she's been laying in bed with, supposedly kissing and smooching and whatever. Like, I'm sure she does not care about anybody on this team, probably even Superboy, and eventually they might break up, both Blackfire and Superboy. Oh, are you gonna just be heartbroken when that happens? Probably not, but at least, hey, it gave Superboy something to do in this show, because he is basically nothing But again, a person that has been naked for how many episodes? That's all he was ever good for, sadly enough. And still to this day proves that by him having nothing to do in this episode. Back we go. Like, when Blackfire isn't in here, neither is Superboy. Like, he has seconds of screen time. Wow, that's incredibly just such a waste of time for this character again. So let's go and let's talk about Beast Boy or Best Boy and Raven. So Beast Boy is getting massively gigantic hooded clothes, which I'm like, okay, like, of course, like, that actually makes sense to have clothes not fit Beast Boy, which I'm like, you know what, that's actually smart. Instead of having fitted clothes that they randomly found, I like that. But so what ends up happening is that evidently Beast Boy is to find out about this Lazarus Pit symbol. And so Raven is just like, well, okay, let me go and use my magic to figure out if I can use my magic with this symbol to find out where a possible Lazarus Pit is, so we can do something with that. So they go on in this episode, and they find the Lazarus Pit that I guess is in the prison, of course, that ended up bringing back up Jason Todd. So here's the thing that I think is going to happen. So all of a sudden Beast Boy or Best Boy and Raven are there, and all of a sudden Raven's powers are going completely haywire. And I'm like, oh no. Please do not do what I think you are going to do. Because I think that this moment is going to bring back Trigon. And so Raven is having her magic go haywire and is eventually going to reincarnate Trigon from the Lazarus Pit, and then Trigon is going to be back. The horrible CGI'd character that I did not want to come back is probably going to come back by the end of this season, so that way in 4th season they can have Trigon Part 2. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Season 2 concluded that character, right? We had a whole first season that did Trigon, and that character should be dead. The whole conclusion of Season 2 in Episode 1 was like, okay, we should never see this character again. That freaking sucked. And now we're probably going to have that Part 2 come back. Or maybe we might have Enchantress or something like that happen here. I don't know. But I'm putting my money on it that Trigon comes back and we're doing this again. And I'm like, oh my god. If that's what happens, I am not interested in Season 4 at all. Because I know that's what's going to happen, is Trigon is going to happen. And I'm going to be severely ticked about that whole thing. So again, let's go and let's talk about what Crane does in this episode. So, Crane is to weirdly order pizza, and so the pizza man is like, oh, well, it's $25, because evidently you ordered out of our delivery zone. I'm like, I'm sorry, but if a pizza was to not have a delivery zone, they would not have delivered whatsoever. Because I've had that happen. Like, I've had certain pizza companies where they said, oh, I'm sorry, you're out of our delivery zone, so we can't, like, get that to you. And so we'd have to go and personally go to the building and just be like, but dude, it's right here. Like I was obviously like a block away, seemingly. It's like, well, sorry, that's our rules. I'm like, really? Okay. Like, it's just, sure. And so we got the pizza. Like, so this makes no rational sense to me, but whatever. I guess if they say, like, dude, this is Bruce Wayne's house, he'll probably give us like $1 million to deliver this pizza because he tips well. But yeah, so Crane is just like, well, hey man, like, thanks for coming here. I'm gonna go, and I don't have the money on me. Like, let me go and get this. I'll give you a big fat tip. And so all of a sudden, Crane is to go into one door and come around to the other and just knock this guy over with some kind of like cooking tool. Like it looked like one of those big spoon of a things, and just clocks the guy. And so now weirdly we just have Crane who's just dissecting this guy, like opening him open and like slicing and dicing his like stomach and torturing this guy to death. And then the big thing that we end up seeing at the end of this episode is when Todd comes back at the end of this episode. Crane comes in and is to tell, like, after torturing this guy, it's like, oh, we don't need masks anymore. And that's how they end the episode. But there's some middle things that we're to talk about also. So, Starfire, seemingly the only real true Titan that seems to consistently get a story here that is to, like, be seemingly at least, like, tolerable besides everyone else, but still, like, I just, like, so Starfire is to go to this, place, and all of a sudden, like, because she's roaming around, all of a sudden she's to conveniently go to this convenience store to see this woman who's trying to buy something for her child. I think it's like medication, like cough medication or something, because her baby's really sick. And so this girl walks off of this store, and so I guess Starfire ends up buying this medication for this baby. And so all of a sudden Starfire is to mention, like, yeah, it seems like I've been having these visions of these weird, wild hallucinations. And you would think that this woman would just like, okay, crazy person, I'm going to get away from you. And so, like, Starfire asked this random woman who she is and who her baby is, because, like, because Starfire keeps seeing this baby for whatever reason. And so eventually they introduce themselves, and Starfire gives this woman this medication. All of a sudden, this burglar guy arrives from out of nowhere to, because what a coincidence, this guy just so happened to be in the neighborhood and is now wanting to get money from this woman because he's like, hey man, like, or hey woman, I want my money. And the girl's like, well, I'm sorry, I can't get you your money today, like my baby's sick. And so Starfire is like, well, I'm going to get between these two people. And so the loan shark guy is to just be like, well, I guess the only way I'm going to get my money is to have to shoot someone. And so this loan shark-like guy shoots Starfire. And so all of a sudden, Starfire gets into this weird flashback of things where, like, she's back in Tamarin, and they talk about, like, these powers being shifted over. And I guess maybe Blackfire was supposed to get Starfire's power, but instead they decided to give it to Starfire. Like, I don't know exactly what all that, like, means or whichever, but it's some kind of flashback, weirdly, of, like, Starfire's homeland in Tamarin. And so all of a sudden, shortly thereafter that, Starfire is all of a sudden to get her powers back, and her bullet wound is to heal. And then all of a sudden, Starfire is to seemingly go flying up somewhere, maybe back to Tamarin, to maybe go and, like, talk to her folks. I don't know. Like, I didn't understand what happened with Starfire, but I don't seem to understand what is going on with any number of these people. So So Tim Drake is to eventually just be kind of walking around town, and eventually Donna Troy bumps into Tim Drake, and so they're like, "Oh, hey, what a small world it is, right?" So Troy is to talk to Drake and to mention about like, "Hey, like you got shot, right?" And like, how is your wounds? And so Drake pulls up his chest because I guess he has 6-pack abs, and is to mention like, yeah, like actually the wound like is weirdly healing. I'm like, oh my god, is this gonna be like Tim Drake from the comic books? Like after like Darkseid was to have killed Tim Drake, and then Bruce Wayne goes back to grab Tim Drake out of out of death's clutches, and then all of a sudden Tim Drake becomes this like Superboy of Robin, where like he can't be killed, and like he's like the greatest, much more powerful version of maybe that's Damian. Are they gonna seriously use Damian's story as Tim Drake's story to just make him like a super powered like being? Well, I guess because they haven't done Damian right. Maybe that'll be maybe they'll have to forcibly do they'll do that in season 5 or season no, they'll probably do it in season 4 or 5 cuz they've been talking a lot about the Lazarus Pit, so I'm sure they're going to do Damian Wayne either in 4 or 5. Probably 5 cuz I think 4 they have like a thing where they have to go into Trigon again, and then season 5 will be Tim Drake coming in because they have to do a whole season where actually Tim Drake is actually Robin, and then for whatever reason like Tim Drake will be probably Batman or someone else, and then Damian Wayne will come in, and then they'll do that whole story, right? They can't just have Tim Drake technically be a Robin and him never don the costume. That would not make any rational sense to me, and that would bug the crap out of me. So, because I'm assuming we probably have one episode left, is Tim Drake gonna wear the costume for one whole episode? And then they go, oh, well, let's do Damian Wayne now, because we've technically done Tim Drake. That would be hilarious. Tim Drake goes back to his people at that restaurant, and they're to say that they've kind of had some bad people that they've had to like protect themselves against, but it seems that everything is fine. Nobody has bullet holes in them. So Tim Drake goes down to his Drake cave or Bat cave, his version, where he has kind of gone through and I guess haggled for a bunch of equipment that is to eventually help him be able to be a quasi Batman at a smaller budget. And so Troy is to eventually go, okay, well, I'm going to go and try to figure out if I can find a connection to my Titans team so I can let them know I'm still here. Why didn't Troy go to any of the usual spots? Like, does Troy not know where any of like the Titans hangs out would be? That just seems so goofy to me that you would think that Troy would be able to know exactly where to go, but no? Anyways, this is so goofy. So, now let's go to the Grayson thing. So of course, Grayson ends up deciding, well, hey, I'm going to go to Wayne Enterprises to try and connect, because there was some goofy thing where Todd was going to do something, and so Grayson goes off to Wayne Enterprises to try and intercept that, but Todd is just like, dude, like, didn't you realize that I would have thought of that? Like, dude, so we wasted a bunch of time having Grayson run off to Wayne Enterprises just to have him be forced to have to face Todd, like, either by the Batcave or just, like, eventually have them fight it out in the middle of public, because why wouldn't they have done that in the first place? Why wouldn't have Todd been waiting at Wayne Enterprises, knowing full well that's where Grayson is going to go? They waste so much time in the show doing something to just like, oh, no. No, they waste so much time on the show. So it's ridiculous. So eventually both, because Todd mentions like, oh, meet me at this place at this time, and they're like, okay, fine, we'll do it that way. So we have both Todd and so we have Red Hood and Nightwing fighting it out again for the just X amount of time now. What ends up happening is Todd ends up losing his mask, and so eventually when it seems that Nightwing is getting the drop on Todd to maybe have this whole thing finally be resolved, all of a sudden we end up having a guy coming out of the crowd. Once Jason Todd was almost going to pull a gun on Red Hood and decides not to and decides to drop the gun and walk away, all of a sudden there's to be this civilian who comes out of the shadows. Maybe he'll be the next Robin. Maybe that's what they set this all up for. Maybe that's Damian Wayne, and maybe he's going to become the next Robin after Tim Drake is to just become the next Nightwing or Batman or something. Because what? Anyways, so what happens is a civilian from out of nowhere goes and starts shooting Nightwing, and so Nightwing is to have these bullets come flying off of him. And so Grayson, or Nightwing, just decides like, oh, well, like, I'm going to do nothing about this guy who is holding a gun that is going to shoot me. And so Grayson turns back around to face Red Hood, because Red Hood is to have a gun on Grayson. And so this civilian is still popping off shots against Grayson, and one of them ends up finally landing and hitting Grayson on the neck. I'm like, man, if this guy would have just shot Grayson's head, this show would have finally been over, because really this show rests on Nightwing, right? Like, man, if he would have just shot Grayson in the head, like, I would have just been like, oh my god, he's dead now, unless they Lazarus pit him or some other garbage. But kill Nightwing off. Kill Nightwing off, have a Battle of the Cowl kind of situation or something for Grayson, and like, that would be interesting to be who's going to be like scrambling to becoming the leader for Titans. And it would be interesting to have either Tim Drake become Robin to be the to be the leader of Titans, or maybe Jason Todd does his version of being the new leader of Titans, or something. Like, have a Battle of the Cowl situation for Nightwing for like a whole entire episode, and Grayson will be dead. I will be just so enthralled about that. Just to have this character a non-existent entity, because he's carried so many freaking episodes, it's ridiculous. So Grayson ends up getting shot in the neck. He falls over, and so we just have a bunch of civilians just kicking him numerous times over. I'm like, I'm sorry, do all these civilians realize that Nightwing's suit is to be bulletproof? I'm sure it's kick and punch proof also, but just kick him in the nards consistently. Just kick him in the nuts. Just go ahead and 50 times over, just kick him in the nuts. Like, his nuts will be broken, and then he'll be dead. Just do that, I guess. Maybe he's not wearing a nut cup. I don't know. Go for it. So that's when Jason runs off to Crane, and Crane's like, hey, no need for masks anymore. And then that's how the episode ends. So I'm going to get out of here. This episode was just like, Like, I was I was so bored with this episode. Immediately once we got on here and I saw, like, just Crane just shaving his face, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to be the worst Titans episode I've ever seen. And it pretty much lived up to that. I was just, and I don't remember much about the earlier seasons, especially season 2 was like disappointing to me in my eyes. Um, but I thought that, like, once HBO Max was going to take this over, that, like, at least we would have like a good bulk of episodes here. But, like, it started out interesting, but then it escalated freaking down, and it was just such a brutal show to watch that but it might honestly have been better than just Batwoman, and that's about it. Because freaking Doom Patrol, like, is looking very appealing right now, and they just have the goofiest freaking episodes. Like, I've kept on seeing Doom Patrol, and the Doom Patrol episodes are funny and weird, and I think I'm enjoying them. And maybe I should probably just start reviewing season 3 because I've started watching the episodes anyways. But I don't know. I think I might just eventually just go in and, like, review the season as a whole. But I don't think I'll remember any of the episodes by then. So maybe I'll just go and, like, spam watch like a couple of episodes, and maybe after this season is to be over, maybe I'll start watching Doom Patrol season 3 because it seems like I'm having a good enough time with that show. It seems like the episodes are quasi fun, even though I don't think I know every piece of, like, DC lore of who certain characters are, but I'm technically enjoying the show. So with that said, I'm gonna get the heck out of here so that we can get this out there. So goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.